And glad you could join us today. This is the Steve Mazzacane podcast. We are here. Glad to be back. Our sponsor for today's podcast is BC Building Concepts in the center of Branford, Connecticut. If you know it, it's a building company. But one thing we're kind of pushing with them, and I'm working with them on marketing with regards to kitchens and bathrooms. If you in the center of Branford, where GW Carson's is, right there is their showroom. If you get a chance, stop in. They're really good people. I appreciate them being one of our sponsors and supporting the work that we're doing here with the podcast. Today, we're glad to have our state and I have to get used to saying state comptroller because I'm used to saying state rep.
You just say Sean.
Yeah, we have Sean here. Yeah, it's I do have a tendency, even when I'm referring to you, just saying it's Sean and like, who the hell is Sean? But our state comptroller, Sean Scanlon, glad to have you. How long have you been comptroller?
2.5 years.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Have I had you?
I've never been on the podcast as comptroller. I used to come on a lot as a state rep.
You did. I mean, I remember just talking the other day, I had you on January 6th.
Yeah.
Like you were live when we were watching. I mean, I'm watching TV and talking to you at the same time. It's just an absurd day. But I'm really glad you're here, and I am glad you went from, I think you're the person outside of maybe Jamie Cosgrove that I've covered the longest as state rep. So it was Pat Woodlitz and then you and then what have you. And
I was just thinking, the last time I actually think I was at the BCTV studios was my very first debate when I ran for state rep. And I think you were the moderator.
Was it Cartier?
Yeah.
It probably was the moderator. That was upstairs in the video studio. Well, we're in the podcast studio now, which is just phenomenal. They did a great job doing it, and I'm really grateful to BCTV for letting me record here, and I'm glad you can make it down here.
Glad to be here.
It's a busy time. I know the session just ended, and you're paying a lot of attention to what's happening in Hartford. You and I have an issue that we have to start with. The last time we talked, outside of that January 6th one, I promised to finish watching The Wire.
Did you do it?
I did finish watching The Wire. I have to tell you that season, not the last season, but the season
4.
where I talked,
that's the best
with
one.
the school stuff and the education.
And politics.
And it really is how heartbreaking, how hard you can work for something, and then it was just really, really.
Yeah. I think 4 is the best season.
Oh, well, I think so. Even reading like charts later on, everybody's like the number one season of any show is The Wire. Season 4. So I get that. I hope you didn't. Did you finish Yellowstone?
I did actually finish Yellowstone. My wife and I have like 5 shows that we can actually watch together where we like wait for each other, and that was one of them.
Okay.
And we went back and just watched the last season.
Yeah, it was, without Kevin Costner, you kind of lose a lot.
It's like impossible I can't even imagine how hard of a job it is to like land the plane on those shows, right? Because no matter what you do, people are going to be upset about it, right?
Well, so, I mean, the last season, did you watch Game of Thrones?
I did.
That was horrific.
Terrible.
I mean, that was just absolutely terrible. So a lot of these shows, it's hard. You're right. People are so invested in it, and then they're expecting this. How do you beat that expectation?
You can't.
It's impossible.
You can't.
Yeah, you just can't do it. All right, so at some point, we'll talk about future shows I should watch and you should watch. I'm not watching a lot of shows. I'll be honest with you. I watch more nature documentaries than anything right now. And they're just much more easy to watch, and I don't have to worry about the ending. So I'm glad you're here because I want to talk about a couple things.
Sure.
First, we're going to talk about Medicaid, Medicare. We're going to talk about Trump's bill, and I want to talk about the Democratic Party. But, yesterday a few days ago, we had this shooting where 2 firefighters were lured into a fire and shot. And that came right on the heels. I know it's Connecticut and it doesn't apply to that state, but you passed a bill to fund, was it like $100,000 immediately if something like this happened. Talk about that bill. Talk about why you passed that.
Yeah. Well, the backstory is in October of 2022, there was a similar shooting in Bristol where a guy lured the police to his house and killed 2 Bristol police officers in October of 2022. And in the legislative session that followed in 2023, Vinnie Candelora, who represents this area and is a very good friend of mine, we represent the town of Guilford together. As you know, we worked on a lot of things across party lines, and he and I passed what became known as the Fallen Officer Fund, which was to create a fund that was essentially there so that if a police officer is killed in the line of duty, we're going to be there for them. And the legislature passed it and basically gave me the ball and said, hey, here's some money. Go figure out what this should look like. And Vinny and I together went across the state. We went and met with the chief in Bristol. We went and met with a bunch of other different folks. And they said, here's how you should do it. There's 2 immediate problems that come up. Number one, sure, life insurance comes in, pensions kick in, different national law enforcement things kick in. But in the immediate aftermath of that thing, you got to pay your rent. You got to go get groceries. You got to buy your kids suits to go to their dad's funeral, right? You need immediate financial assistance. And the second thing was health insurance. And that surprised me a little bit, right? Because you don't often think about that. And what happened in Bristol was two of the women that were married to these guys were immediately kicked off the health insurance because of the way the contract was structured. You terminate your employment, the contract didn't specify about how, you lose your health insurance.
That seems...
Now, they went at and fixed it because they could do that within their contract. But what the chief said to me was one of these women was pregnant at the time. And she went to go to the doctor to go to her appointment. Again, this is the worst moment of this woman's life. She's pregnant, and she found out that she had lost her health insurance. So fast forward, we passed a bill in 2024 that says that every police officer who's killed in the line of duty in the state of Connecticut, their family gets $100,000, and we enroll them in the health insurance plan that I run. People don't really think about this, but as the Comptroller, I run the largest insurance plan in the state that's not Medicaid, 250,000 people. So we enroll them in that plan for 5 years and their families. In 2025, I proposed a bill to say, hey, let's expand this to all first responders, right? We lost a firefighter in New Haven in 2021. We lost a firefighter at a brush fire last year called the Hawthorne Fire from Weathersfield. So what we did is pass the Fallen Hero Fund this year. It says that any cop, firefighter, or EMT or paramedic who's killed in the line of duty, we do the same thing. Like you just said, this terrible tragedy happens all the time. These guys go out there every single day. My dad was a cop. My grandfather was a New Haven firefighter. Like, I come from a family where you don't know if the person you love is going to come back. And the least that I think we can do for these guys is be there for their families if they pay that ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer to me. You mentioned the healthcare thing that you've been pushing this for businesses to join it, but you also pushed. So there's a few things out there. There's a healthcare, and then there was a retirement plan you were talking about doing. The initial reaction to that, I know, because some businesses were like, it was convoluted, it was hard to get part of it. I'm sure you've made some improvements since then. Talk about that. So,
on the retirement or the healthcare, where do you want to go
both.
first?
So my theory on everything is that we have to get people to be able to take steps on their own.
Yeah.
So if we have small businesses that can help these people get either health care or that's great. So let's first of all talk about the retirement plan.
Yeah. So just level set for your listeners. We passed this program called My CD Savings, and its intention is to allow small business in the state to help their employees save for retirement at no cost to the business.
Okay.
And so for me, this is a personal thing. My mom ran a small business. My parents split up when I was 6. My dad moved back to New York, where he was from. My mom raised me here in Guilford. She never had a retirement plan. She ran a small business, right? And she could never afford to provide a retirement plan to her employees. And so as a result, she's now in her mid-70s and still works 9 to 5 every day because she didn't have the ability to save for retirement. Most small businesses are in that same boat.
I'm aware.
So a couple of years ago, we created this plan that basically says that the state, through what we are already doing for all the retirement plans that we run, will create this Roth IRA program, and we can give it to any small business that has 5 or more employees. We do all the hard work. We do all the investing. We do all the benefit procurement. All they need to do is offer it to their employees. If the employees want it, they do it. If they don't want it, they don't do it. The day I took office, we had about 700 companies that were signed up for this because it was just getting going. And today, Steve, we have over 7,500. And I've made this a huge priority of my time as comptroller because it is personal to me. And I've probably done like a business walk in half the towns of Connecticut where I just go with the mayor or first selectman. We walk to the main street. I hand out these flyers, and we've had a big uptick of people doing it. Of course, there's people out there that, their dad took them down to Charles Schwab when they turned 18, or they took them out today. You and I were not like that, right? So we've learned because we've taken that initiative, but not everybody has that financial literacy. It's a big problem in our state, big problem in our country. And if we can help people just get that tool where it's really easy, where their boss, who they trust, says, hey, man, I have this option for you. Do you want to start saving for retirement? Some people will say yes. Some people will say no. Right now, 86% of people say yes, per our stats. Meaning
that are eligible, or
86% of people affirmatively say, yes, sign me up
that
for
are
that.
in businesses that are signed
So
up for that.
14% say, nah, man, that's not for me, right?
They may have other things that they're.
Of course.
Yeah.
The point is we just want to give tools to small business. This state is too expensive for most people. It's unaffordable for a lot of people. We have to make it more affordable to do business here and raise a family. And I view this as one of the many ways, and health insurance, that we can try to lower the cost to do business in the state.
And the money just comes from the employee. The employer's not matching anything?
The employer doesn't match anything because of the way this is structured. But the employee pays a modest fee like you would if you were doing this
2%, 3% fee or something.
somewhere else. But the employer pays nothing. And I've had all these crazy stories that people have shared with me where I had a pharmacy one time, guy had 100 employees. He said, I was paying an arm and a leg on 401k fees for my employees. I got out of that plan, switched to yours, and I gave every one of my 100 employees a raise, right? So stuff like this that I've heard is really cool. The program is growing. We've got 30,000 plus employees that are saving in this plan, and most of them are saving for the first time, which is great.
Wow. Okay. And health insurance.
Yeah. So my big thing, this isn't a thing that we actually can do right now, but when I was in the legislature and now as comptroller, I have tried to push for something called the public option, where small businesses, the same small business that is getting hosed when it comes to trying to offer employer health insurance to their employees, employers, small employers or nonprofits could buy into the health plan that I run. And my big thing about this, Steve, is like when I got elected in my 20s, I would be so embarrassed to go to CVS in Guilford, and I'd be standing in line. Of course, when you're in public office, people know you, right? And I'd be so embarrassed to see people I knew, especially older people, go up to the pharmacy counter before me and be paying a lot of money for prescriptions. And I would walk up and pay next to nothing because of the plan that I have. Politicians shouldn't have better healthcare coverage than the people that they represent. And so I sponsored in all the years that I was in the legislature this bill to say they should have access to this. And then I ran for the job that actually runs it, and I've tried to do it since. But the major insurance companies, surprise, surprise, hate this bill because they don't want the competition. And that bill has not been able to pass, but I've still supported it.
I will tell you just personally, there's a reason why so many self-employed people get married to people that work for the government.
Sure.
Or a municipal town.
Sure.
And I know what health insurance costs because I can't quite get on the exchange.
Yep.
So I'm paying like $900 a month plus a $6,000 deductible for my health insurance, which everybody laughs at me like, you're paying how much? Like, that's absurd.
Yeah.
And I can't get coverage for almost anything. So there's incentive. And I see everybody else, my competitors are out there married to people in unions, and they have these great insurance policies. So if there's some policy out there that I can go and be a part of a group, I'm all game.
And that's the other thing too is, so this is my plan, right? I support it. I think it's the best thing. There's a conservative version of it that CBIA, which is the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, they've been pushing, which is called the Association Health Plan. I think my idea is better. At the end of the day, I don't care if it's my idea,
so what's
their idea. Theirs is basically, it says instead of the government doing the work, that small business can band together, form an association health plan.
Like that.
Exactly. But, I have 250,000 people that are on my plan.
Yeah.
They might have 200, right? And you're never going to have the leverage that I have with the contracts that I sign. I have a $1 billion contract with Anthem, right? Every time that I have a problem, I can get the CEO of that company on the phone. Did my mom get the CEO of Anthem on the phone when she had a problem trying to get health insurance? No shot, right? So I think that in this world, in the economy where things are changing so rapidly, you need leverage. Otherwise, you just get run over. And I think if I can provide people with that leverage, and there are safeguards and backstops that the taxpayers are not on the hook for this, which we can clearly do, I don't see why it's a bad idea that a small business or a nonprofit.
Passing?
It's not passing because the insurance lobby is still powerful in Connecticut. This is the insurance capital of the world, and they get people riled up and they say, this is scary, this is socialized medicine. It's not. We would literally be contracting with a private insurance company to run this, just like we do it right now. But those, big $1 million campaigns that they spend to try to influence the legislature on lobbying, it works. And so we haven't been able to get it done. But I think eventually it will get done. And the main reason is this, and you just talked about it, Steve. The small group market is where most small businesses get their insurance, right? It's designed for that. In the last 2 years, 3 of the companies have stopped offering small group insurance because they can't afford it and it's so expensive that nobody's buying it, right? And then you get people like you who are in that stuck middle ground, right? Where you don't make enough money that you can afford the crazy expensive premiums and deductibles, but you don't make less money that you can qualify for potentially these programs. This is for the people in the middle, right? Who I think we can help. They will pay for it themselves, but it will be much more affordable.
I don't mind paying for it, but I'm tired of the first question on the first date being, what's your insurance plan, and can you get somebody else on there if we get together? So there's no question about that. Now, instead of just agreeing with everything you're saying, business in Connecticut.
Yeah.
You were the head of Tweed Airport for a while.
Yeah.
You helped get a certain airline here.
Yeah.
Here's the question I have for you. If a company can come in and have legal, we're talking about Avelo here, legal contracts with other branches of government, they're not doing anything wrong, nothing illegal, and then be attacked by the Attorney General. I'll go one step further. We also just passed a law, or the legislature passed a law, got vetoed, where we literally pay unemployment after 2 weeks of a strike. Why would a company come to Connecticut?
Well, let's break these down. They're different, right? We can talk about striking workers in a second, but let's talk about Avelo. So Andrew Levy, the guy who runs Avelo, this guy, I'm the head of Tweed Airport, right? We have, when I start in 2019, we've got 1 flight every other day to Philadelphia, 45,000 annual passengers. I got about 25 employees. During the height of COVID, when we are running the airport to have 1 or 2 dudes take a flight every day, this guy calls me up in the summer of 2020 and says, hey, you've never heard of me. I've raised $200 million. I used to work at the Legacy Airlines, and I believe that I can start my new airline at your airport. And I asked the guy if he was drunk or high or crazy, because I had never gotten a call like that, right? But he backed up everything he ever said to me. And in November of 2021, we announced that he was coming, that we were doing flights there. The day I left, Steve, we had 1 million passengers a year, about 20 nonstop daily destinations, and 200 employees. They now have 400 employees and even more flights. It's been a big success. But when this happened, I talked to Andrew, and not to divulge personal conversations, and I just said, what were you thinking? Because whether you run any business in America, if you weigh in on the left or if you weigh in on the right, it's just alienating half of your clientele.
That. It's a business decision. Right? That's true.
And he made a business decision that has consequences, and every business decision has consequences. And it would be the same if he had said that he was doing something that the right doesn't like, right? If he was, I can't even think of an example, but it happens all the time, right? It happened during the Biden administration. Some of these companies that were doing really woke things, they lost part of their business.
So if you want to, like in Florida with Disney, and I get that example, but no one forced William Tong to start a war with a company that has helped be, you're saying it yourself, went from 1 passenger to 1 million passengers a year. We have an economic engine at Tweed now because a guy took a huge risk on Connecticut.
No doubt.
And I look at, GE just has moved, Trump just announced, and I take what Trump announces with a grain of salt. I understand that, but $500 million in Kentucky, and I'm saying to myself, if I was GE, now they were here before, but the infrastructure's here, why would they come to Connecticut? And if I'm the head of GE, I don't know that I'd ever come to Connecticut.
I think you come to Connecticut because of a couple of things. Number one, I think we've turned around our finances tremendously.
I agree with that.
So when you look at CBIA, for example, I tell people this stat all the time. In 2016, when I was first getting going in politics, you were there, you were covering it. We had terrible budget deficits. Malloy raised taxes. I voted against the budget when I was a freshman, but it was a bad situation. And they surveyed the businesses. CBI does this annual survey every year. And in 2016, they asked the people that are in CBI, thousands of businesses, what percentage of you does not have confidence that the state government basically has their shit together, if I can curse on this podcast, right? 79% said that they were worried about the predictability of state government and the state budget, right? Last year, that number was 7%, right? That is not a typo. That it's a 70+ percentage swing from no confidence in
I'm
state
surprised by
government
that number,
and
because
finances.
usually there are a bunch of people who are like, no, automatically.
No doubt.
So I'm surprised by
but
that
the
number.
point
Okay.
is, big swing,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
And when I go to businesses in Connecticut now, 10 years ago, when I was first starting out as a state rep, and I'd go to a biotech company in Branford, or I'd go to a small business, they would say, the taxes are too high, the state government's a mess, people are leaving here, nobody wants to live here, it's terrible. Now you don't hear that as much from people. Is it still too expensive to run a business and raise a family in Connecticut? Yes. Do we have to make it more affordable? Yes. Are we finally in a position to do that because we've gotten our fiscal house in order? Yes. But the climate is different. And I think Connecticut still has a lot to offer in terms of an educated workforce. It's a beautiful place to live. There are few places that are prettier in the summertime than Branford and Guilford.
No argument there.
All these things are good. Are there always going to be elected officials on both sides who try to take advantage of things that happen politically? Yes. But the basic thing is, I think you're seeing a lot of businesses stop getting involved in politics because they know it's a lose-lose position for them no matter what they do. And I personally, I don't want to see businesses involved in politics.
I very much doubt Avelo was sitting there saying, hey, let's take Trump's side. I think they were saying there's a way to make some money.
I don't think he thought, again, not to divulge conversation with him, I don't think that he thought that the reaction was going to be as strong as it was. I'm not sure how he didn't think that, because we live in this hyper politicized partisan climate where these issues are really, really upsetting to people on either side of the issue.
I think we'd like to think that not every politician, like I would make an argument that if you were Attorney General, you probably would not have done what William Tong did.
I can't speak.
We don't know for sure, and I understand different office, but that's the question that I have is, yes, the fiscal house is in much better shape. Some of that is some decision making. I think Lamont is a conservative Democrat. He's made smart decisions. Some of that is luck. Some of that is a pandemic happened and people ran into Connecticut, and that's helped property values and all that sort of thing. Whether it's things we've done that are sustainable, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where are we in 5 or 6 years? I don't know the answer to that.
I think it's a combination of both.
There's no question. But we've already had to we pour money into things already that we had emergency votes for to do that. And I wonder if that's going to continue happening. And we'll talk about the Medicaid and the federal stuff soon. Yeah. But Connecticut on its own, I do sit there and I say, holy cow, a company comes in here and literally changes. And you were part of this. Yeah. And I defended. I remember people writing articles saying, what the hell? And I was like, he's got the connections. Why would you not want this guy? But And it worked, and I was right, and you were right, and you got the job done. And Tweed has become this huge engine in this area. Why the hell are you going after that? Yeah, and I maybe want to have a private conversation with him and say, hey, rethink this. So be it. But this public attack on a company, and I started saying, why would any company want to come to Connecticut after that? And so I understand our fiscal house is in better order. Yep. I worry what happens if Lamont is not the guy. He's probably going to get challenged in some way, shape, or form from some members within the party. Because I think he's a voice of reason when it comes to economics. I think he understands it. But I do wonder, are we sending the really wrong message when it comes to, I want business here. Yeah. And if you do one thing we don't like, it's legal, I'm not going to go crazy about it. Yeah. So that's I kind of wonder if we're on the wrong track there. Okay, let's talk about what happened today. Yeah. The Senate passed this bill. Yep. My shock on this whole thing is that they went forward with the tax cuts they went forward with. Yep. My mentality always was, listen, if they're actually trying to cut the deficit and they cut Medicaid, it's hard, but it's a sacrifice. They're trying to cut the deficit. When you cut Medicaid and then keep these tax cuts, now you're having pain and not cutting the deficit either. So I don't know what the hell this budget actually does.
Well, I don't think it was ever about the deficit.
Yeah, clearly. Well, that's why Elon Musk is so mad. Like that's what he was yelling about cutting. But
I just think the president's tax cut in 2017, I think, was one of the things he was most proud of getting done.
I agree.
And that tax cut is going to expire at the end of this year. And I don't think there was any world in which he was not going to let that happen, because he was not going to let his signature policy issue from his first term expire, right? The problem is, in government, you can want to do something, but you got to find a way to pay for it, right?
Well, I don't know if you do, but yes, you should. Technically, you should.
You should,
yes,
right? Yes. The way they found to pay for it was to jack up the long-term debt in our country and to make really, really difficult cuts to vulnerable populations that I think are going to have a really bad impact. And I think there will be a big debate between now and whenever the next election is and into the future about whether or not that was a good trade for the American people.
Okay. So let's take out Trump's aspect of it.
Yeah.
This passes.
Yep.
And somebody says, Sean, you have to cut, I think it's about 12, 13% of Medicaid spending.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that in Connecticut? Now, Connecticut has typically been one of the easier states to
Yep.
get some of these benefits, Husky, for example.
Yeah.
So let's start here. There's Medicaid that is spent on seniors that have nothing. Like, I don't see any way to change that.
Yeah.
You have the working poor
Yep.
to get Medicaid. You have people who work at Walmart, McDonald's, that have jobs that are
Yep.
working, getting Medicaid. Where do you start if you're forced to make these cuts?
Well, let's talk about what's actually in the bill,
Okay,
because
go ahead.
that helps get you where you want to go. So, the president and congressional leaders have said till they're blue in the face, we're not cutting Medicaid, right? Okay. They're cutting Medicaid, but it's not in a direct way that grandma is going to get kicked off of Medicaid. What they're doing is they're basically punting difficult decisions to the states and basically saying, you have to figure this out. And they're doing that in two really wonky but important ways to talk about.
go
And I
ahead.
know you love to go
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
so we're going to go there, right? The first one is on work requirements, right?
Yes, I saw
Work requirements sound really commonsensical, if that's a word, to anybody that hears them, right? But work requirements don't work. There is actually only one state in the country who has actually initiated them, that's Georgia. And there's a couple of those states that have been in the works. And not only are they hard to do, but they cost states a lot of money. So Kentucky, for example, they spent $250 million in 2018 to try to set up a work requirement program for Medicaid. Then a judge actually ruled that they couldn't do that. And so they spent $250 million for nothing. The program never got initiated. This bill only has $200 billion for the entire United States to figure out how to do this. And so right off the bat, you're saying to the state of Connecticut, you have until, they changed the bill today, it was until December 31st of 2026. And then basically they give Dr. Oz, who's the secretary of CMS, which is what runs Medicaid and Medicare, they give him the ability to say, hey, if the state's working hard, like we'll give you two more years to do it. But basically what they're saying to Governor Lamont and the other people in the state is you basically have a year and a half to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to hire all these different consultants to figure out an entire new system of how you're going to monitor whether Steve Mazzacane is working 80 hours a month or not, right? So you're basically trying to say that you're going to save money by then asking the states to spend all this money
So help me out
to set the system up.
Of ignorance here. They apply for Husky benefits. They show a paycheck that they worked 80 hours last month. They can get it. What is the additional fee that would case? How do you set? What is the fee to set this up?
There's no system in place that enables that to happen right now. There's no that's a new system that you have to design, right? And I know this seems like it's probably not that big a deal to do, but you're talking about hundreds of thousands. There's 1 million people on Medicaid in Connecticut right now. And this specific population, they did, in fairness to them, carve out a lot of different people, right? So this is really going after one segment of the Medicaid population. That's the expansion population. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, that bill expanded Medicaid to adults that were childless but poor, that could qualify. These are people who work at Walmart, actually. They don't make enough money to buy their own insurance. They're working hard. 78%, Steve, of people who are on Husky in Connecticut have some form of employment. So the idea that this is a big problem that we have to solve, it's not.
Okay.
They were trying to find a way to cut Medicaid without damagingly politically cut Medicaid for them. That's number one. So no matter what, the state is going to have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to design this system. And inevitably, what happens is people fall through the cracks of the system, right? They screw up. They don't, they're working two jobs because they're trying to make ends meet. They screw up. They don't put their form in. The website is broken. All these things happen. That's where you get into the numbers that they're sharing of 12 million people losing their insurance because they think that we're going to lose people through this process. And the state's going to have to do it. The much wonkier thing that is even worse than the work requirements is the hospital tax, right? So the way this works in Connecticut is that we tax the hospitals. And the way this works in every other state in this country, except for Alaska, is that we tax hospitals. And as a result of that, we give them the money back and we get more dollars in Medicaid dollars for the state.
So we kind of fudge the numbers to get the number higher and get a higher reimbursement rate.
And again, the thing about this debate is that a not great process? No.
But it's the process.
But it's the process that 49 states, whether you're ruby red or deep blue, have been using for decades, right? And should that have ever happened? No. If I was president of the United States, would I have ever supported that? No. It's essentially
you're just
juking the stats, if we want to talk about the wire,
exactly
right?
Right, yes.
But it's the system, okay? And I tell people this all the time, right? The reason our hospitals and our Medicaid program is in bad shape is not Donald Trump's fault. It's the fault of state government for 20 years of underfunding the system. We have not raised the provider rates in decades in the state. As a result, it's hard to see doctors. The hospitals are not getting paid nearly as much as they should be getting paid. And therefore, what they do is they just jack up the cost of caring for people who have commercial insurance, which makes it all more expensive. So this is not all Donald Trump's fault, but what Donald Trump just did is going to make a problem that we owned worse. And so the hospitals is a great example of that, because now what this bill says is that we can't tax them as much as we have been taxing them, which means that we don't get as much money, about $250 million. We will not get that money from Washington. So at a time when we are working, and the governor has asked me to lead this effort in negotiating with the hospitals, I've been doing it for 6 months. At that time, we've been working with the hospitals to see how we can give them more money from the state to raise their Medicaid rates. We're now having a conversation with them and say, how the hell are we going to get $250 million
just to keep what we're doing now?
Just to keep the doors open when you have hospitals in Connecticut that are struggling. Yale, which is essentially a duopoly of healthcare with Hartford Healthcare, everyone thinks that they're doing great. They're not. All these hospital systems are struggling. And so this is, again, something that saves them money, that can help them get to the number they needed to get that tax cut. But it's basically punting these really difficult things to the state, which just hurts the same people that I think the president is saying he wants to help. And so, for me, this bill is going to create some really big challenges for us. The good news for Connecticut is that we've got a $4 billion rainy day fund, right? We have made great strides to turn our finances around. So we have some ability here, but
do you consider this a rainy day?
I think that this is a humongous problem for us. And the problem is, as we can get to in a second, while the predictions of a recession went up around the height of the Liberation Day tariff stuff, they're now dropping, which is good. Thank God. I pray every day we don't go to a recession.
That's what JP Morgan came out with. They put off their recession.
Any Democrat that's rooting for recession is an idiot.
I agree.
I don't want a recession to happen. And the last time we had a recession in this state, we had a lost decade of the 2010s, right? We had $1 billion in a rainy day fund in 2009. Jody Rowe, they used that in one day.
Nope, it's
then they
crazy.
had no rainy day fund, and we had to raise taxes, cut spending, do all these things.
And I gave you credit when you put out a video a year ago, because Democrats were going after, let's start using our rainy day fund. And
yes.
And your words were, this is not a rainy day.
So Moody's, all these rating agencies, Steve, you follow this stuff. Yep. They say you need $2 billion to withstand a recession, right? So half the rainy day fund gone if we have a recession, right? And there will be a recession. That's cyclical. It's economics, right? So if half the rainy day fund is gone just with the recession, then we got to get into the cuts, right? So there's been about $500 million of cuts so far under the Trump administration. He's been president for about 200 days. He's going to be president for 1,200 more days, right? He's there for a while. And I think we should prepare for the fact that the amount of money that we have been getting from Washington is going to be less than we were in previous administrations, whether it's for things like Medicaid or other programs that they're cutting. We're just going to see less money. And so to answer your question, I think it is raining. And again, equal opportunity here. Even before Trump took office, it was raining in Connecticut for some people because we haven't raised the Medicaid rates. Yeah. We haven't been giving cities and towns the money that they need to offset the high cost of property taxes, right? We haven't been funding our schools. I think we have to have a really big conversation as a state about where we want to go and what our priorities are going to be and how we should figure out what the most thoughtful, rational fiscally smart way to potentially use some of that money is, knowing that there are other challenges coming down the road.
Are there people capable of having that conversation, Sean?
Yes.
Because all we hear is we hate Trump, we love Trump, we hate Trump, we love Trump, and
Yeah.
actual practical application, so we have this issue. I'll give you my experience when it comes to, I work with a lot of small businesses, and I hear constantly how workers are working up to the threshold to get
Yep.
their benefits and then either quitting jobs
Yep.
or begging for off the book stuff or getting these benefits, and they're actually doing quite well.
Yeah.
We don't means test. I know a million examples of, these numbers, they're making the money, they're literally walking out of work in October because they're at that threshold. They don't want to lose their husky.
Yeah.
They live with their parents. They have no rent. Like there's a lot of these stories. Every restaurant I know of has 3 or 4 of these stories.
Yep.
Is there a way internal? I know we don't like to use these words and talk about let's get people off of it if we can.
Yeah.
But should we be cracked? Should it be so easy in Connecticut to get husky, to get the benefits we're giving?
Well, I view these programs as a hand up.
But
right?
that doesn't happen.
No.
a lot.
But I'm
Go
saying,
ahead.
but let me finish. Right?
All right.
I don't view these programs as lifetime programs that people should be on, and I don't think it's a good thing that people are always just trying to figure out how do I work up into the thing where I do it and then I got to leave to go back to it. That's stupid, right? One thing that I think is something that we should all agree on, Democrat, Republican, is that we should be evaluating every single program we have and figuring out whether it's still being run the best way that it possibly can be. We don't ever do that. That's not something that we do, right?
100% agree. I think
And that is something I think we could find a lot of common ground on, right? So like Doge, for example, right? If that's what Doge was actually really doing, I think you'd see a lot of people saying, hey, this is actually a pretty good thing that we should do, right? I think that some of the Doge efforts are more about just changing government and cutting government than it is
Yeah, I agree.
defining
I get it.
efficiency,
No,
right?
yeah.
But if we actually committed ourselves to doing that, we of course would find efficiencies. And I think we would say, hey, the way this program has been structured since 1965 is probably not the way it should work in 2025. And how do we do it? But that's only one part of the problem. The second part of the problem is why the people are gaming the system in the first place. It's because it costs too much to pay their rent and there isn't enough housing available for them. They have these weird program situations where they're making only a certain amount of money, and that money is not enough for them to pay their Eversource bill, to pay their rent, to buy groceries, to do all these things. And so people are making decisions back to animal farm, human nature, because they got to survive, right? And I don't begrudge them for sometimes they're making those decisions. I think we need to change the conditions on the ground, make it better for people, and then evaluate the programs. And then I think that we'll be in a better situation.
But I think so there's 2 arguments I'll make here. One,
But do you disagree with that?
I of course I want better conditions and
Yeah.
easier to make money.
Yeah.
But I do think there are going to be people who are never going to be incentivized to do it unless they see an end to the handouts.
Sure.
But I'll also give credit where credit is due here. And maybe it was Josh, maybe it was Lamont. Like, we have experience, and I know nobody wants to do this, of looking at a program and making it better.
Yeah.
And the DMV is a great example of that.
Yeah.
So I know people love to trash the DMV. I don't know if you've been to the DMV recently.
A lot better.
You go online, you make your appointment, you go in there, you're there for 5 minutes, you walk out. It is a significantly better. Now, I don't know the answer to this. Is it cheaper to run?
Yeah.
I'm guessing, Josh did a good job with a lot of this stuff,
Yep.
but if we actually, maybe you don't need a group, maybe just one guy to go in and say, let's start looking at this, because one, if we apply the same principles, how people actually use the system, let's cut out all the waste, whatever it is, to this. Yes, you can say we need to make it easier. That's the standard kind of Democratic response. It needs to be better, easier to live, pay your bills, what have you. What the other people will come back to you and say, what small business owners will come back to you and say is, I agree, but this person who just came to me and said, I need 2 shifts in cash because I can't go over this limit, also posted on Instagram the 4 concerts they were at last week and their $500 Birkin bag or whatever the heck they're looking at. So there is this catch-22. And I know it's evil to talk about the lower income people in any negative way. But the reality is, if you want people to do better, sometimes just handing them something forever isn't going to help. Now, we do amazing things in this state that people either don't know about or don't take advantage of.
Yeah.
I just heard a program last month where we bust people into, I think, Hartford and learned how to weld, right? You can start welding. A woman can go to job welding for $30 an hour out the gate. There's such a demand for welding.
Yeah.
And we're not taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And so the question is, are there ways to say, listen, there's a deadline here. You're not going to have a baby and then get this for 18 years. We want you to get educated. We give you cheap community college, if not free community college. We give you all these programs. At some point, you have an obligation as a person to take advantage of those programs. And that's what, if I was a Republican responding to you, I would say, okay, we pay for all these things. Why can't we get more people to use them?
Yeah, look, I think there's always going to be examples of people we know anecdotally in our life or things that pop up on libs of TikTok.
But it's more than that.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I'm saying the point of them is that there are a lot of people on these programs who really need them.
I agree.
And there are a lot of people who would love nothing more than to not be on them because they want to be in a better situation. Part of the reason why you see, like, for example, Trump doing really well with low-income Hispanic people, for example, he completely changed the trajectory of that, is because that is a community that looks at him as a successful business guy and says, I want to be that way. I want to work hard. I want to pay my bills. I want to play by the rules, but I want to drive a nice truck and I want something for my kids and I want all these things. That's like the American dream that people want, right? I think a lot of people want that. They don't want to be stuck trying to balance this out and figure out if I make this much money this time. Or I just think that that's not the majority of people. But I will say to you, Steve, that I do think, like I just said, we need to reevaluate everything we do in government and figure out whether it's still the most efficient way of doing it and it's still working and helping people. People in my party are really afraid to do that. And I think it's stupid because I think we need to be better about doing this kind of thing.
I think they're afraid to do that because it has become this, you're an awful human being if you dare suggest that people shouldn't be getting this stuff. If you dare suggest that, and I don't mean people shouldn't be getting like basic human needs taken care of, but if you dare question any of this, you hate puppies and children.
Yeah.
And I know it because I've posted things saying let's reevaluate things, and you're an idiot and you're racist and you're all this other stuff, and it gets kind of crazy. So I'm a registered Democrat.
Yep.
But I will say this is your party because you're elected into the party right now. Okay, I call myself more an Obama Democrat than whatever's happening right now. But you need votes from these people, so I don't. So that's I've written about this. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
How do you change that in the Democratic Party? Right now, Trump owns both parties, right? You're either the party of Trump or the party against Trump, and that is the message. We had a rally on the Guilford Green, the Kings thing, No Kings thing, and I didn't see one sign that had a productive message on it. It was what you're against, what you hate, we don't want oligarch, whatever it is. I didn't see anything that talked about, all the things that we had heard in the past, universal health care. I didn't see anything that talked about a path to citizenship. I didn't see anything that talked about any of the productive things that made me register as a Democrat years ago.
Yep.
How do you get past where you are now as a party and become, what I would argue, productive again?
You have to, I think it's a couple of things. I could count on one hand, half of one hand, the amount of times I talked about Donald Trump when I was a state rep on social media or in person, right?
Yeah.
Just wasn't a thing I did. It wasn't my job. It wasn't my job to do it.
You don't really do it now. I mean,
I don't do it.
Fairness, yeah,
I don't do it now,
yeah.
right? I don't do it now because it's not my job, right? And I also don't think it's productive. The people who like Donald Trump are not going to not like Donald Trump because they saw Comptroller Sean Scanlon's Facebook post about this, right?
Yeah, you're probably not changing minds on that.
And the people who hate Donald Trump are going to see what I post and it reinforces what they think, but it's not changing anything.
That's true.
And my whole reason for getting into politics when I was really young was because I want to change things and I want to make things better. I don't care if I work with a Democrat or a Republican or whoever. I want to just get stuff done. And I think the answer is we don't put a lot of candidates forward for higher offices who actually want to get stuff done. There are a lot of Democrats that are working hard at the local level of different governments, that are in the state house, that are mayors, that are first selectmen, that don't get consumed in national politics every day. They just get stuff done, right? And I think if you put forward candidates that are real, authentic, not weirdo people, and can actually talk to people about things, which sounds like an easy thing for politics, but is not so easy. And those people are focused on getting things done. Will you eventually, sometimes as we have in this conversation, have to talk about what's happening in Washington? Sure. But you have to pair talking about him and Washington with, I may disagree with what he's doing, but here's what I'd be doing differently, and here's what I want to do for you, and lay out that vision. Everything about our politics today is this vortex of just responding to him, which is when he's winning. When we're doing that, he's winning. He wants us to do what we do, and we play into it every day. He's been doing this for 10 years, and my party still has not learned the lesson of what makes him successful in politics.
But it's also worse now because, unfortunately, not only does the rhetoric – listen, I didn't vote for Trump, and I would never call myself a Trump supporter, although there is some on the left that would say just defending him in any way calls you a Trump supporter. But I'm not going to sit here and say there's not some things that he's done that he said he was going to do. The border is relatively closed.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was luck or not, but the Iran thing seems to have worked out in a good situation. So I can't sit here and say everything is wrong, everything is terrible. I like the fact, I voted for Hillary against him, but Hillary was far more of a pro-warmonger person than Trump is.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that about Trump. So we need somebody to step up and say, okay, the guy, you don't have to like him. You don't have to like his personality. But the guy had the #1 TV show. He was in Home Alone movies. For some reason, people really like him.
Yeah.
Maybe we should shut up.
But I think they like him, Steve, for a lot of different reasons. But I think one of the things that they really like about him is they think, despite the fact that he is very rich and has been educated in Ivy League schools and all this stuff, they feel like he understands them.
He talks like them.
And there aren't a lot of Democrats that at the national level that I think people think understand them.
Swear more.
So
in your next speeches, get up and swear more often.
But it's not just about
sound like the average man.
I understand, but it's deeper than that. And I think that he has tapped into something. And I think the thing that we have to figure out, not just as Democrats or Republicans, is just as Americans, is how can we actually give people that we disagree with the benefit of the doubt and actually have more conversations. There are people that that if I post something on Facebook, even if it's not even about him, there's this reflexive.
Yeah. No, I agree.
You have to be lying. You have to be doing something wrong. And it's the same for people on my side about the other side, right? We got to break that. And, I think you have always been somebody who I think has tried to cut through that.
But I think I could be wrong, but I look at my audience, and it's not a small audience. I mean, listen, I reach Branford, maybe Guilford, like 3 or 4 towns. And that number, if I look at my social media pages and the articles, is 50% of the audience of those towns. That's a huge percentage of those towns. Now it's growing. I'm pushing stuff out larger. But what that tells me is that there is a large group of people who are not on the left and right. They may be registered Democrat and Republican, but they are in the middle and they are watching and just saying and trying to look objectively.
Yeah.
For the Democratic Party, there's about 10 million voters that you need in 3 states or 4 states that are watching this and saying, I have Trump and he's doing the Iran thing and he's doing this and he sounds like he's talking to the average man. And then I have these incessant, for lack of a better word, Karens yelling with signs that aren't productive and TikTok videos. And that's and I do marketing. And so this is part of my issue. Like, why would anybody be appealed? What's the appeal of that right now? And how do you get, I think Lamont's a moderate Democrat. I think he's a logical, reasonable guy. He's not the charismatic guy that's ever going to lead anything. But I'm watching Democrats fight him. Every social media post, he's Republican, he's this, he's like, Jesus Christ, this is the guy that's making smart decisions, that has led your state in a much better position. You're rejecting good people.
I think the challenge, though, is, and this is not a criticism of you, it's a criticism of all of us.
No, it's okay.
We look at a couple politicians' Facebook posts or a couple online comments, and we think that that's reflective of society. But to your very point, it's not at all.
No, I
right?
agree.
It is not at
agree.
all. 90% of people don't pay attention to politics, don't want anything to do with politics. They vote they do their civic duty. They may catch a story on the nightly news or they get an alert on their phone and they check it out, but they're not living, eating, breathing politics. People who are on social media are living, eating, breathing
100%.
politics. And typically people who are living, eating, breathing politics are at the far end of either spectrum. And so it seems like the noise is dominating the conversation, and in large part it does. But behind the scenes, Ned is a great example of this. He is the most popular governor we've had in Connecticut probably in 50 plus years. And the reason for that, with the exception of maybe Jody Rell,
I was gonna say
right
Jody.
when she took office in that crisis moment, right? But from a sustained period of time, he is one of the more popular governors. And maybe he's not popular in the Capitol, where there are politicians on both sides and lobbyists on both sides who are in this every day, and they might get pissed off because he vetoed their bill or he doesn't stand with them 100% of the time. But if you ask the average Connecticut person, what do you think of Ned Lamont? The average non-Twitter troll person would probably say, hey, listen, I like the guy. He sounds like he's doing a good job. He's like my uncle. You know, he got us through COVID. He was good at briefings. He was communicating. He shows up. I remember I went with you and we had lunch with him at Hornets Nest one time. And, you know, he was talking to the staff and, you know, hanging out with people. He's just a regular down-to-earth guy, despite being with a different upbringing than you and I, right?
No question.
And I just think that I think a lot about this, Steve, because when I was a state rep, I was opposed one time and then I ran unopposed 3 times. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think part of it was I went out and listened to people and I tried really hard to work with people on the other side and work with people on my side and find that common ground. I think a lot about how to do that at a statewide level, and certainly a lot how to do that at the national level. It's really hard because you basically can't do what we're doing now at those levels, right? You can't go to the Rotary Club and have people walk away saying, hey, I don't agree with everything that kid just said, but he seems like a good kid and he's working hard. How do you characterize yourself at the national level? It's really hard. But I think the answer is just talking to people about what you want to get done, being authentic, and not just saying everything he's doing is bad and that's my entire platform. We have to say, hey, maybe I disagree with what he's doing. This is what I would do differently, or this is what I think we have to do to move the state forward. I think we need to do that a lot more.
So we have Chris Murphy.
Yep.
Chris Murphy is, who you know well.
I do.
Is a senator in a state where he can't lose, right? There's no chance of Chris Murphy losing anytime soon. This is the guy who can say to his own party, stop, calm down, let's give this guy credit in these certain areas, and let's be pragmatic about fighting back and talk to people. He's the opposite.
Because the incentive structure in Washington is not there.
Exactly, 100% correct.
We
need somebody to step up.
Well, listen, if I post on social media tomorrow, we should all work together and find common ground. It's going to be anemic likes. If I say something critical of Donald Trump, it's going to be crazy likes. And it's the same on the other side. If I demonize AOC or Bernie or these other caricatures of the left and I say how I'm owning the libs and I'm doing all these things, it sells, right? It raises you money online. It gets you booked on Fox News or MSNBC.
There's one other category, Sean.
Sure.
And the other category is someone like you, and it doesn't have to be you, I'm not telling you to do this, that starts standing up to the own party, says, guys, attacking every Republican on social media isn't the way to go.
I don't think it's about standing up to your party. I think it's about showing people another path. And I work every day to try to do that. I have always done that.
I don't question you. I've written publicly that there's 2 politicians that I would work for if I ever, and then one is no longer running for office and the other was you. And not because I agree with everything you do, but you've never lied. Yeah. I've never seen you lie to me. When I've sent you far-right Republicans to handle stuff, and I know they've attacked you, and part of me is laughing about it behind the scene. But I know you handle it and you handle it well, and I don't do that on purpose, but it is what it is. And I respect that. But at some point I get frustrated as an Obama Democrat that nobody steps up and says enough. That you go to DTC meetings in every town and their they're anti-Trump pep rallies. That you have Jamie Cosgrove and they're calling him and it's Jamie Cosgrove The guy doesn't give a damn about politics. He runs probably the most fiscally sound. Every state wants to be Branford. Every town wants to be Branford. And he gets attacked and called names. They accused him of funneling. And I'm like, what is going on with this party?
Yeah.
This is everybody who has an R next to their name. You have a guy who was a D running as an R because they don't want to be part of that in Branford. So why is nobody – okay, I don't expect AOC or Bernie Sanders to do it. But it kind of breaks my heart a little bit that your guy hasn't done it.
I think it's if you look back at the history of and I know we're getting to time, but if you look back at the history of political parties, when political parties are in the wilderness, whether it's the Labour Party in the UK before Tony Blair took over, or the Democratic Party in America before Bill Clinton, right? Even before that, right? Obama, right? There have been Republican presidents. Those guys don't get where they are because they run around the country telling everybody why they're wrong. They show them another path. And people start to say, wait a minute, I'm sick and tired of losing elections. I'm sick and tired of being demonized. I'm sick and tired of losing people that should be voting for us. And then somebody shows them another way and they get behind that person and the party changes. I think that that's what's ultimately going to happen. Am I saying that I don't agree with some of the things that Chris Murphy and all these people say? No, I'm not saying that. I do agree with a lot of that they're saying.
Fundamentally,
right?
I'm sure you do.
But strategically and politically and from a country perspective, I think there's another way. And I think that that other way is just showing people, look, it's fine to say when you disagree with the other party. I'm not saying that we all need to kumbaya all the time. That's never going to happen. These are big, serious issues that people have strong feelings about. But I think you have to say, I disagree with what they're doing, and this is what I would want to do better. And I think if you show them that and you show them that you understand them, that's the other thing is people just don't think the Democratic Party understands them anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
And we have an identity crisis right now where we believe that we're the party of working people, but working people do not believe that we're their party, right? And I saw that in the town of Branford, right? When I first started running for office, this was a Democratic town, right?
Yeah.
And you'd knock on a door of a guy and there'd be two trucks in the driveway, right? And it would be a working person. You walk up there and that person was a registered Democrat and they would say, I'm a Democrat. By the end of my time door knocking in a place like Branford and other communities in the state, that same house, they are not Democrats anymore.
No question. I agree.
But I think they should be, right? And the reason that they're not, in a large part, right, is not about economics. It's about cultural. Because in some ways, they used to say all politics is local. I think all politics is now cultural, right? And a lot of my friends, I don't hang out with political people. I hang out with real people because I hate political people. I shouldn't say that. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. But I hate.
There's the quote. Hold on a second.
I hate talking about politics all the time, right? I'd rather talk about sports. And my older son, who's now 6, plays hockey. And so every couple nights I'm at a rink with a bunch of dudes that work at the DOC or work in automotive or work in manufacturing, right? And we talk about just stuff in life, not about politics. And so many of them say, I can't believe you're a Democrat. Like, you can talk about real things with me, and I can't believe that you're a Democrat. And in some ways, it's almost hard for these guys to fathom voting for Democrats because nobody they know votes for Democrats. But I'd argue that I can win those people back and that Democrats can win those people back because on the economics, I think they should be voting for Democrats.
Well, you have – so this bill that has now passed the Senate and has to go back to the Senate, I understand. Yeah. But this bill is actually very good for working class families.
I would argue it's a mirage, Steve.
So the SALT deduction up to $40,000, I know it's only for 5 years, but that's, for Guilford people, I mean, not a ton of Branford people are paying $40,000 in local in income tax and state, but Guilford people Guilford's as Democrat as they get right now. But there's a bunch of homeowners that are going to see a tax cut because of this. The working poor are screwed. Those who rent are screwed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is I think, and a lot of times the bases of our parties have flipped, right? The Democrats always were the party of the working poor. Now the working party is the party of Trump, right? And the Democratic Party has become, in many ways, a party of college-educated people, wealthier people, and then a smattering, a big coalition of other people. But that's diminishing too, right? And so I just think we have to get back to that identity crisis. I think we have to figure out who we're going to be and who we want to be for people and what are the policies that these people want to say. I think part of the Democratic Party's other problem is that our solutions, we're the party of defending institutions that most people think are broken. and defending
Interesting.
and arguing why things are hard, right? Eversource is a great example. People are so pissed off about their high energy bills. The legislature passes a bill this year, right? They work really hard on it. It's a bipartisan vote. The guys who sponsored the bill, I'm not demonizing them. I know they worked hard. They came out and said, this is going to save you 5% on your electrical bill.
It went up 45% last year. I know. I saw that.
We need to save somebody 75% on their Eversource bill. And we're not going to win anybody back and get them to believe that we understand what they're going through when they're living paycheck to paycheck and they get a bill for $700 and they say, you're going to save me 5%.
Well, they put out a press release that said that. And I'm like, are you tone deaf? Do you not understand this?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Big ideas, authenticity, sharing what you want to do. It's always worked for me. It's worked for a lot of the people. I think it's the path forward for us. And I think that people will understand that, especially as we get into the rest of the world, right? Trump is not going to be there forever.
That's true.
And I think it's very interesting and probably a whole other podcast about what's going to happen with his movement when he's no longer the head of it, at least in terms of running for office. But I think there's a big opportunity for us in the next couple of years for us to reclaim what made the Democratic Party the strong party it was when I wanted to become a Democrat, when I was reading books about JFK and so inspired by that, when I first got involved and Obama was my guy, right? Just trying to do all these things, move the country better. It wasn't about demonizing people. It was about moving us forward. And I think that that's the ultimate recipe for success.
Before we go, though, just in realistic, on-the-ground terms, if this bill passes in its current incarnation, whose impact? What do you see the state doing? Do we see people? Is there a person that's gonna lose their health benefits? I mean, what should people expect?
I think you're going to see people. I hate to give a number because again, people sound that's hyperbole and you're fear mongering. I think people are going to be hurt by this bill, and I don't say that just because Donald Trump is the one doing it. I say it because I believe that in my heart, and I believe that there's another way. Right? Like I said. There was no world in which he was going to not extend his own tax cut. But how he chose to do it, I think is going to hurt a lot of people. And I think it's going to hurt a lot of people that actually voted for him. Most people that are on Medicaid don't even know that, right? They don't even understand that. It's something that they don't see. And I think that when people understand what's in this, I think that people will question why he's doing it. And part of me actually wonders whether he really even knows what's going on. I think that Congress, the Senate changed the Medicaid stuff. They made it way stronger than the House had done. And now I think you may see a problem with Mike Johnson when they go back to the Senate, because I think a lot of those guys are like, wait, you've now put us in a really tough spot. You're putting the president in a tough spot. You even had a guy like Josh Hawley, who's the guy on January 6th who was raising his fist and pumping up the crowd. He was the one out there saying any cut to Medicaid disproportionately hurts the president's coalition, because in a lot of these red states, these people that are working, 2 or 3 jobs, they're working hard. They like the president. They voted for the president. They're on Medicaid and they're going to get a cut from this. And I think that in time, this is going to have an impact. But we as Democrats can't just say bill bad. We have to say, forget the bill. We need to do more on our own to control what we can control to make healthcare better in the state of Connecticut. And this is our plan to do it. And
it had issues even before this bill.
And we shouldn't be afraid to talk about that.
And that's what we are afraid to talk about.
Well, we did.
No, there's no question. But you and I don't run the state. Well, you have a larger role running the state than I do. I'm nowhere close to that. All right. So it's interesting. And we may have to have another one once some final bill, passes and talk about what it means. Okay. And what are you working on? And by the way, what are you running for next? Are you governor next? Are you president next? Or what's the next thing you're running for?
Well, I think the governor is running for governor
is he running
again.
For governor? Did he formally announce it? He didn't announce it,
He hasn't formally announced, but I'm pretty sure he's going to do it. I think he should do it.
I think he should too.
I love working with him. He's been great to work with. He's given me a lot of big projects to work on that I have really enjoyed working with him, and I think he's moving the state forward. There are things, of course, that I disagree with him on, but by and large, I think he's doing a really good job, and I think he's going to run again. If he didn't, I would strongly think about it. That's the one job in politics that you really have the power to do things. And to get back to everything we've talked about, right? I have no desire to go to Washington.
You have 2 young kids now. That's not going to happen.
That's a huge part of it. But even if I didn't have young kids, like I said, I got involved in politics to get stuff done. They don't get anything done. They yell at each other. They go on cable news. They tweet and they raise a lot of money. Nothing happens. In Hartford, still at the state capitol, as you know, you really can still get stuff done together. I passed more bills with Vinnie Candelora than I did with some Democrats, right? And that's because I think we still are a place that you can do that. And there's no better job if you want to move the needle on things than to be the governor of the state. So at some point in my life, I think I'll take a shot at it. If it's open, I'm being candid with you about it. People dodge this question. Why? It's the truth.
You have been, so the knock on you, if I was to give a knock, is I think people's lives change a little bit. Their views change when they start a business. Like Christine Cohen has started a business. Comey started a business. Like they've had, and I think that impacts what you've never done that.
Yeah.
Now, your father being like in public, so you have that perspective as well. However, my experience with you is that you've always been pragmatic. And so I don't, you may not lose as much. There's a unique thing that you go through when you start a business.
Yeah.
You realize how difficult it is.
Yeah.
The fees and the paperwork and this and all that stuff that happens. So at some point when you're bored, start an eBay business, just file all the documentation to go through it to figure out what it's like, because it really is hell.
Yeah, no, listen, and I saw my mom doing that, right? As a single mom, small business owner, like I grew up seeing her struggle, and I understand it. Have I ever run it? No, but I've seen it. And, look, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. I got elected at a young age. I got this one other thing that I would maybe give a shot at running when he's done. But I will only be 42 years old when his term is over. And if I ever have the honor of getting elected governor, that's great, but I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. You are not going to see me as an 80-year-old politician. I'm very interested in business. I look forward to going into that when I'm done with this job. I don't exactly know what that'll be, but I'm going to do something like that.
Well, you did have a stint running an airport.
And I loved it, right? I mean, like we did this $100 million deal with Goldman Sachs. I got an MBA without getting an MBA to negotiate with those guys. But politics isn't forever. But I do think that people who have made it what they do and get better at it are good to be in politics. People knock people who have been in office for a while.
That's the argument. Sam Gadenson's a friend of mine. And he's always made that argument. We talk about term limits. He goes, the ability to be there for a while and get things done and have relationships, people underestimate.
Yeah, I'm better at this today than I was when I first started as a rookie state rep, right? And you learn things and you get experience. And again, when I have a problem, I call the plumber with the most experience. I want the doctor who's been doing surgeries the longest, right? There's something to be said about that. Should you do this for 50 years? No, I don't think so. But I've gotten better at this, and I think as a result, I can be more effective for the people that I got into politics to help. And if people don't agree with that, then don't vote for me. But I think that we got some really big challenges, but big opportunities in the state in the next couple of years, and I want to be a part of it. And I love the job I have, and I love doing what I do, and I'm just grateful to talk to you about it.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to see what happens. Forget the Trump aspect of it, but if this bill does pass, we have a reality to deal with. So looking forward to see how you address that. Sean, as always, thanks a lot. We'll talk next time about what new shows we're supposed to be watching.
My wife and I are watching White Lotus. It's like 5 years old.
I did. Oh, so back to the first one?
We're on season 2, and it's really good.
Season 1 was very good. Oh, 2, because that one girl, what's her name? The main actress.
I don't know.
With the crazy voice. Stifler's mom.
Oh, yeah.
She makes it.
Yes.
Yeah, she just makes it, so she's good. So I did see that one too, and I watched the third one as well. So I don't know what to tell you to watch because I really haven't been watching anything. Go see F1.
I'm going to see F1.
It was really good. All right. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks again for Building Concepts as our sponsor today, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.